Chapter 20. The Poetry Arrives. Until we found a singer, we were restricted to the rehearsal room, and I wanted to get back out in front of an audience. Despite the bonhomie and champagne, I was ready to resent Paul Barrow for not getting along with Jeff Thomas. But I couldn't get hung up on that for too long. Securing Andy was a major step forward, and we weren't wasting time. The band's sound was finding its groove. We offered the vocal job to Gordon Sharp from the Freeze, who had come down from Edinburgh and looked and sounded the part. I called him from my parents' phone in the hall and asked him when he planned to return to Birmingham. I've thought long and hard about it, John, but I'm going to stick with my own band. Another blow. The Barrows had more ideas about who could fill the vocal role, but on this subject they were clueless. The answer would come by way of an angel, a student at the university who worked part-time at the Rum Runner on weekends. She knew what we were up to and suggested to her roommate that he come down and meet us. Simon Le Bon, his real name, grew up in Bushey, an outer suburb of London, the eldest of 3 brothers. We never did find out what his father did for a living. Dodgy things in Whitehall was the most anyone could get out of him. But his mother and his mother's mother had both been dancers on the stage, and Simon had been encouraged to follow them into the limelight. As a child, he had acted on TV and been given small roles in commercials. He had gotten caught up in the punk euphoria as Roger, Nick and I had sung in several bands. The one of which he was most proud of was called Dog Days. Simon had chosen to go to university to study the dramatic arts, so he put his music making on hold. Thankfully for us, he was offered a place at Birmingham. He was 2 years older than me, and our relationship, as it developed, would often feel like I was one of his younger siblings. But at that first meeting, what struck me most violently about Simon was his presence. He was tall and well-spoken, and there was something noble about him. His Huguenot blood, perhaps. And then there was that name. Quite fantastic. Hair cut short, bleached, dirty blonde, it gave him an edge. I can't forget what he was wearing for our first meeting, as it's become part of band legend. Skin-tight leopard print ski pants with hoops under the boots. Undoubtedly a dubious look, but, he was studying Shakespeare. In fact, he could have easily been Shakespeare's idea of a rock star. You knew he'd look good in a doublet. He was lean and he was punk and he was ready to move on up, like the rest of us. We didn't play together the first day he came by, but talked about music, working each other out. Simple Minds had just released their second album, Reel to Reel Cacophony, which Brian Eno had produced. It was an important album to us, and it was on Simon's radar too. I remember that as being significant. He returned to the club a day or two later, bringing with him a battered blue book, his Dog Days notebook, which was filled with lyrics and ideas for songs. That book contained the basis for many of our future compositions, perhaps most notably The Chauffeur. The 4 of us plugged in our instruments and played Simon a track that best represented the sound we'd been working on. It started with a synthesizer sequencer and a 4-on-the-floor disco drum beat. After 8 bars, Andy, Nick and I came crashing in together. The working man's guitar, fat and no nonsense, Nick's delicate melodic keyboard riff, and my tightly honed New York bass line. It was all too much, but it fitted together like sex and leather. Simon knew where he wanted to be. He sat and listened as we played the song through a few times, making notes in his book. Then he stood up, all 6 feet 2 of him, sauntered over to the mic, book open, and began to sing. I've been in this grass here for the last 10 hours. My clothes are dirty, but my mouth isn't dry. How does it happen? Does it fly through the air? Oh, I gave up asking days away. And now I'm lying here waiting for the sound of thunder. I wrote